Chief of the Mo Traditional Council, Nana Koru Abu Dika Sukabe, the 5th Paramount Chief of Zini Traditional Council, His Excellency Zia Chaudhry, UN Resident Coordinator, senior government officials, Ambassador Khadija Idrisu, Chief Director of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, Ms. Bernadette Seyram Azar, the Youth Advocate for the UNFPA, distinguished Toili Kubanov of UN Volunteers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I thought that I begin my remarks this morning by paying tribute to illustrious sons and daughters of Ghana who have served the United Nations in varying capacities throughout the 80-year history of the United Nations. And I note that there have been hundreds of them, but I will highlight a few so we can celebrate them on this auspicious occasion. And I begin with no other than the first Sub-Saharan African Secretary General of the United Nations, the 7th Secretary General, His Excellency Kofi Atta Annan, who was Secretary General from 1997 to 2006. His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chambers, who was Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel. Her Excellency Hannah Sewatete, Special Representative for Libya and Head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya, has held several UN positions. Former Foreign Minister, Dr. Ibn Chambers, a former Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Ghana. Her Excellency Mata Ama Echa Pobi, Assistant Secretary General for Africa in the Department of Peace Building and Political Affairs and Peace Operations from 2021 to date. His Excellency Matthew Krenzel, UN ACCRA representative in Uganda, and for the avoidance of any doubt, the whole of Ghana, and I believe West Africa, is rooting for his candidature to be the next Director General of the UN ACCRA. Ms. Anita Kiki Beho, Deputy Special Representative in the United Nations Mission in South Sudan, UNMISS, and Resident Coordinator in South Sudan. His Excellency Alexander Kwesi Saki, President of the 62nd Session of the UN General Assembly, the first African President of the General Assembly from 1964 to 1965. Mr. Kenneth K.S. Dazi, Secretary General of UN Trade and Development, UNCTAD, 1st January 1986 to 31st March 1994. Mr. Robert K.A. Gardner, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, 1961 to 1975. Mrs. Mary Chinri Hesse, first female Deputy Director General of the International Labour Organization, ILO, first African woman to be appointed Resident Coordinator of the UN Systems and Resident Representative of the United Nations Development Program. I also want to pay tribute to our force commanders, Lieutenant General Emmanuel Eskin of blessed memory, who was force commander, UN Interim Force in Lebanon in 1978. Major General Francis Vib Zanziri, of blessed memory, who was head of Mission and Force Commander, United Nations Disengagement Force. Major General Robert Yao Afram, acting head of Mission and Force Commander of United Nations Interim Security Force for ABA. My favorite, Major General Anita Asma, the first African woman force commander of the United Nations Disengagement Force. Squadron leader Sharon Syme, who won the 2024 United Nations Military Gender Advocate for the Year Award for the United Nations Interim Security Force. And all our gallant troops. Consistently, Ghana has been a top 10 troop contributing nations to UN peace operations across various theaters of conflict. And on this auspicious occasion, we celebrate Ghana's contributions to the tapestry of the United Nations at 80. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the government of the Republic of Ghana, I have the singular honor to welcome you all to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs during this week-long commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, and in particular, to today's high-level dialogue, which brings together distinguished representatives, partners, and stakeholders to reflect on two interrelated themes: the future of multilateralism in a changing world and advancing sustainable development and finance in a fragmented global order. Allow me to commend the joint Ministry of Foreign Affairs and UN coordinating team and the Interministerial Planning Committee for their dedication and hard work in organizing this important series of events. Your efforts have ensured that this milestone anniversary is not only a celebration of the UN's achievements, but also a moment for sober reflection on how we can strengthen our collective resolve to build a more peaceful, equitable, and sustainable world amidst growing global geopolitical fragmentation. In this regard, this high-level dialogue is timely, and it is indeed a great honor to address this distinguished gathering on themes that lie at the very heart of global peace, prosperity, and shared progress. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we reflect on 80 years of the United Nations, we are reminded of the enduring power of multilateralism as a force for peace, progress, and collective problem solving. Since its founding in the aftermath of the Second World War, the United Nations has stood as humanity's greatest expression of hope, a platform for dialogue among nations, a catalyst for global cooperation, and a guardian of the principles of sovereignty, equality, and shared responsibility. Through its peacekeeping operations, humanitarian interventions, and global development initiatives, the UN has helped to prevent conflicts, advance human rights, combat pandemics such as Ebola and COVID-19, and promote the sustainable development goals. Yet, as we commemorate this historic milestone, we must also recognize that the world we inhabit today is far more complex, interconnected, and dynamic, with new emerging challenges that demand renewed commitment, innovation, and unity of purpose. We meet at a time when the very foundations of this system are being tested as never before. The world is witnessing rising geopolitical tensions, widening inequalities, the resurgence of protectionism, and a growing erosion of trust between nations. From protracted conflicts to global health crisis, from climate emergencies to cyber insecurity, our shared challenges have become increasingly multifaceted and interdependent. In recognition of these realities, Ghana believes that the answer lies in deeper and more effective multilateralism, not in its decline. We need more of multilateralism. The future of multilateralism must therefore be one of renewal and reform, not retreat. The United Nations must evolve into a more agile, representative, and responsive institution capable of addressing 21st century realities, while upholding its founding ideals. As His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, underscored during his address at the 80th session of the UN General Assembly, quote, "The UN founding charter is outdated when it comes to representation. A continent as large and as significant as Africa must have at least one permanent seat at the Security Council," unquote. Indeed, reform of the Security Council remains paramount if we are to restore legitimacy, equity, and trust in global decision-making. Africa's long-standing call for permanent representation on the Council, echoed by regions such as Latin America and Asia, reflects the global demand for a fairer and more inclusive system that mirrors today's geopolitical and economic realities. Only by ensuring genuine representation and inclusivity can we restore faith in the multilateral order and make it truly fit for purpose. Moreover, the future of multilateralism must be grounded in partnership and coordination. The UN must work more closely with regional organizations such as the African Union, ASEAN and European Union, the CARICOM, to ensure that peace-building, development, and humanitarian initiatives are locally informed and regionally owned. By assuming a stronger coordinative role, the UN can enhance coherence among peace and development actors, prevent duplication of efforts, and ensure that responses to global challenges are timely, efficient, and aligned with local realities. In doing so, we can foster a more networked, inclusive, and effective multilateralism that reflects the diversity of voices and experiences shaping our world today. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the question of sustainable development and finance sits at the very core of our global agenda. We cannot advance the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development or achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement without confronting the structural inequities embedded in the global financial system. Too many developing nations remain trapped in cycles of unsustainable debt, while the promise of fair access to capital and trade remains elusive. As President John Dramani Mahama rightly reminded the international community at the 80th session of the UN General Assembly, we demand not only a reform of the Security Council, but also a reset of the global financial architecture, which is currently rigged against Africa. This call echoes the collective demand of the Global South for a more balanced system of global governance, one that gives all nations an equitable voice and fair opportunity in shaping our shared economic future. The reform of international financial institutions, including the voting structures of the IMF and the World Bank, remains essential to ensuring that developing economies have a meaningful role in global decision-making. The United Nations must continue to play a central role in championing financial justice by advocating for debt relief, sustainable investment, and innovative financing mechanisms that empower countries to invest in their own development, predictable, concessional, and climate sensitive. Financing must become a cornerstone of renewed multilateralism, which prioritizes people and planet over politics and profit. Nowhere in this collective effort more urgent than in the global response to the climate crisis. The UN must continue to mobilize international consensus around climate mitigation, adaptation, and financing, ensuring that commitments translate into action. We must confront those who deny climate change with the overwhelming scientific evidence. For small islands, developing states, and least developed countries, access to reliable and adequate climate finance is not a privilege, it is a lifeline. Through the Paris Agreement, the Green Climate Fund, and the newly established Loss and Damage Fund, we must ensure that those most affected by climate change receive the support they need to build resilience, protect livelihoods, and safeguard their futures. In doing so, the United Nations can reaffirm its role as a cornerstone of global solidarity, guiding the world toward a more just and inclusive, sustainable future. And that is why Ghana is proud to host the Climate Vulnerable Forum here in Accra. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we reflect on these themes during the ensuing panel discussions, let us do so with a shared sense of purpose and renewed commitment to collective action. The challenges before us are complex, but they are not insurmountable. If we act together, guided by the principles of solidarity, inclusivity, and shared responsibility that lie at the heart of the United Nations, we shall overcome our hurdles. The future of multilateralism would depend not only on institutional reform and financial equity, but also on our collective courage to build trust, deepen cooperation, and uphold the ideals of peace, justice, and sustainable development for all. Let this high-level dialogue serve as both a reaffirmation of our common vision and a call to action for a United Nations that is more effective, more representative, and fit for purpose in this rapidly changing world. I thank you for your kind attention.